Hi everybody, it's Anna. Welcome to our first video in the series, Making Peace with Our Past. So this first video, I want to focus on our very early past, which is when we're very little children. So the way I like to think of things is that we come into this earth as spirit. And I particularly like the concept of the Kaya, which I've read from the Jewish Kabbalah. The idea that we are in the spiritual realm and we look down upon the physical realm and we see some work that needs to be done. And so we volunteer to go into the physical realm as an incarnate body to do that work. So we're very willful, we know exactly what we're getting into, and we agree to do it. So we are sent to earth, we are born into a body, and for a while, we are more connected to the spirit than we are to the physical. So we're still feeling kind of limitless and powerful and exuberant and abundant. Then we have the first traumatic moment in our lives, which is like we're jostled into a realization of the limitations of the physical body. And that trauma can really be anything, but it's the moment where we discover that things are not as free or as open or as safe as we thought they were. And that's when our ego mind kicks into gear. Our ego mind is given to us to navigate a physical realm. So it's doing its job. It's supposed to get us through this world safely and to avoid danger and to plan to make things safe. So when we have this traumatic moment, the ego mind kicks into gear and says, oh my gosh, it's my job to make sure we're safe. So I'm going to start coming up with a strategy or a coping mechanism to avoid further trauma. So the original trauma can be something that all of us would recognize as trauma. It can be that we're abused or that we're starved or something, kind of relatively big in our objective way of seeing things. But it can be something actually kind of what an adult would think is minor. For example, let's say you're skipping down the hall in your household singing and someone smacks you and tells you to be quiet. So until that moment, you thought you were fine. You thought singing and laughing you're perfectly free to do that. But in that moment, you go, oh, something's wrong with me. And your ego mind goes, okay, I don't want to get hit again. So I need to make sure I be quiet from now on. I'm going to make myself small and invisible and just kind of tamp down all that energy. And so the ego mind will start creating a coping mechanism and a pattern that it will put upon us, a structure, a rule system, because its purpose is to keep us safe, right? And so what happens is we just continue in this pattern until we discover that we don't like it anymore. Another problem with the pattern is if we are avoiding, for example, conflict or avoiding rejection, let's say, that means our ego mind is constantly looking for rejection because that's its fear point. And it sees rejection all the time. It's even seeking it out. And it accidentally draws rejection to us. So not only are we not in our native energy, just being ourselves, we're actually drawing to us the very thing we most want to get rid of. So at some point, hopefully, we realize we're stuck in a pattern. We can't find the way out. And we have to ask ourselves, is this who I really, really am? And that's the invitation to kind of rebalance the equation. Because for a while, we've been really in the physical realm. Our ego mind's been running things. Now we start getting back in touch with our Kaya, our spiritual truth that's trying to do a work on this planet. And when that happens, we realize that we can't just change our behavior. We can't just decide, okay, I'm going to be loud now. We can't just decide we're going to change the pattern. Although people definitely try that. If you try to change the pattern and you can't do it, often that's when we get really hard on ourselves. Well, I don't have enough willpower. I'm not committed enough. I'm hopeless. But the truth is, we can't change that original pattern because the ego mind's purpose is to keep us safe. And as long as there is danger present, the ego mind's not going to release that pattern. And the bottom line is that danger is still present. There's still a part of us still trapped in that trauma moment. And so the ego mind is continually trying to solve the fact that this child is still shocked and horrified. And until we take care of that original trauma, the ego mind will not release us to do something new. So a lot of the work I do with people, and people do all over, is getting in touch with that little child that's still scared and rescuing them, resolving that problem so that child can then be free to go back to his or her natural ways of being. So it's important to realize that when we are trapped in a pattern, it is not because we are obstinate or foolish or hopeless. It is because there is an actual misalignment that needs tending to. And the way of spiritual growth is always compassion and love. There is always pain attached to stuckness, and we can either beat ourselves up over it and get mad about it and try to white knuckle our way through a change, or we can say, okay, a part of me is hurting, I'm going to take care of that. And in this case, it definitely makes sense that there's a child that's in need, you go and you take care of the child. Once the child is taken care of, then the mind can be retrained. And the mind doesn't even resist retraining. It just won't retrain as long as there is active pain in our lives. So when it comes to the little child trauma or anything else, it's important for us to really try to nurture compassion and kindness to ourselves. We are not foolish people. We are not, weak people. We are people who have a magical, powerful kaya within us, and it is trying to lead us. And it can if we are kind and gentle to ourselves. So that's our first video. See you next time. Bye.